The mechanics gamble. The plasma torch hissed against metal as Maya Chen cut through another piece of salvaged hull plating. Sweat dripped down her face despite the climate control in her workshop bay. Her cybernetic left arm moved with perfect precision, the neural interface responding to her thoughts as naturally as breathing. 3 years since the accident, and she still sometimes forgot which arm was which until she caught the gleam of titanium in the workshop lights. Frontier Station. Alpha 7 wasn't the worst place to make a living as a salvage engineer, but it wasn't paradise either. Stuck at the edge of human space, the station attracted the kind of people who had nowhere else to go. Smugglers, exiles, fortune hunters, and folks like Maya, who just wanted to be left alone to work. The pay was decent, the regulations were loose, and most importantly, the questions were few. She was elbow-deep in the guts of a civilian transport engine when the workshop door chimed. Maya didn't look up. Most clients could wait 5 minutes while she finished securing the power coupling that was currently sparking like an angry firefly. "Shop's closed until tomorrow," she called out, her voice echoing in the metal cavern of her workspace. "Emergency repairs cost triple rate after hours. I am not here for repairs." Maya's hand stilled. The voice was wrong, too deep, with an odd resonance that made her think of stone grinding against stone. Slowly, she pulled her head out of the engine compartment and turned around. The thing standing in her doorway was definitely not human. Nearly 7 feet tall, it had the general shape of a person but covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water. Its face was elongated, almost reptilian, with large amber eyes that reflected light like a cat's. It wore what looked like an expensive suit tailored for its unusual body, and its hands ended in claws that looked sharp enough to cut through steel. Maya's right hand drifted toward the plasma cutter. Old habits from the border wars died hard. "Easy. Human," the creature said, apparently noticing her movement. "I mean no harm. My name is Zektar of the Vorthak Collective. I am a certified ship inspector, and I have a business proposition for you." "I don't work with aliens," Maya said flatly. She'd seen too many good humans die during the conflicts with various species pushing into human territory. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Zektar's scales rippled, shifting from green to a deeper blue. "Your reputation suggests otherwise." Maya Chen, age 28, former military engineer with the Terran Defense Corps, cybernetic specialist. Current occupation, freelance salvage engineer and ship restore. You have worked on 17 different alien vessel types in the past 2 years alone. "Working on their ships isn't the same as working with them," Maya replied. "And how do you know all that about me?" "I make it my business to know the best people for difficult jobs." Zektar stepped further into the workshop, his claws clicking softly on the metal floor. "I have such a job. It pays 100,000 credits. Maya nearly dropped her plasma cutter. 100,000 was more than she made in a good year. "What's the catch?" "The catch, as you humans say, is that the job involves a ship that technically does not exist. A derelict discovered in deep space, brought here for evaluation. The ship's systems are unlike anything in current databases. We need someone with your skills to examine it safely." "We?" "The station authority has contracted my services. They want to understand what they have before deciding whether to claim salvage rights or call in military specialists." Maya set down her tools and really looked at the alien. Zektar's suit was expensive, his posture confident but not threatening. More importantly, his story made sense. Station Alpha 7 was exactly the kind of place where mysterious salvage would end up, and the local authority was exactly the type to want answers before involving higher powers. "Why me specifically? There are other engineers on this station." "Because you are the only one who has successfully restored a ship with a completely unknown power system. The Meridian cruiser you worked on last year was considered impossible to repair." Maya remembered that job. The ship's energy matrix had been based on principles that violated half the laws of physics she knew. It had taken her 3 months of creative thinking and improvised solutions to get it running again. Word got around in her profession. "Where's the ship now?" "Docking Bay 94. It has been quarantined pending evaluation." "Quarantined why?" Zektar's scales shifted again, this time to a deeper, more muted color. Because when the salvage crew brought it aboard, 3 of them experienced what they described as waking dreams. Vivid hallucinations involving advanced technology and mathematical concepts they claimed to understand perfectly while dreaming, but could not recall upon waking. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the workshop's temperature. Psychoactive technology? Unknown. The dreams stopped once the subjects were removed from proximity to the ship. No lasting effects have been observed. And you want me to go crawling around inside this thing? I will be accompanying you. My species has natural resistance to most forms of psychoactive interference. I can monitor your condition and extract you if necessary. Maya walked over to her workbench and poured herself a cup of coffee from the thermal carafe. It was bitter and cold, but it gave her time to think. 100,000 credits would let her buy her own ship, maybe even get off this station and find somewhere quieter to work. But mysterious alien technology that gave people dreams was the kind of thing that usually came with a body count attached. 150,000, she said finally. I beg your pardon? 150,000 credits half up front, and I get to keep any personal equipment I need to buy for the job. Also, I want a written contract guaranteeing that if this ship turns out to be some kind of weapon, I get immunity from any subsequent legal proceedings. Zektar was quiet for a long moment. His scales had settled into a neutral gray color, and Maya couldn't read his expression. Finally, he nodded. Acceptable. Can you begin immediately? Give me 20 minutes to secure my workshop and grab my gear. As Maya collected her tools, she tried to ignore the voice in the back of her head that was screaming warnings. Mysterious alien ships were usually mysterious for good reasons, and those reasons typically involved unpleasant ways to die. But 150,000 credits was enough to buy a lot of distance from Frontier Station Alpha 7 and all the ghosts it held. Docking Bay 94 was in the station's industrial section, a vast chamber designed to handle the largest cargo vessels that passed through the system. When Maya and Zektar arrived, she could see why they'd needed the space. The ship was massive, easily 300 meters long, but its design was unlike anything in her considerable experience. Instead of the angular lines of human vessels, or the organic curves of most alien craft, this ship seemed to flow like liquid metal frozen in motion. Its surface was a deep black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and Maya could swear she saw patterns moving just beneath. The hull plating. How old is this thing? She asked. Carbon dating suggests approximately 50,000 years, Zektar replied, but that estimate may be unreliable given the unknown materials involved. Maya whistled softly. 50,000 years was longer than any known spacefaring civilization had existed. Humans had been in space for barely 3 centuries, and even the oldest alien species they'd encountered claimed histories of only 10,000 years. Any idea who built it? None. The design shares no common elements with any known architecture. It is as if it was built by a completely separate evolutionary path. They approached the ship's main airlock, which stood open like a mouth waiting to swallow them. Station. Security had erected a checkpoint at the entrance, manned by 2 bored-looking guards who waved them through after checking their authorization codes. The moment Maya stepped inside the ship, she knew something was wrong. Not dangerous wrong, just different. The air felt thick, almost viscous, and there was a low humming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The corridors were lit by strips of light that had no visible source, and the walls curved in ways that made her eyes water if she looked too closely. The layout makes no sense, she muttered, consulting her handheld scanner. According to this, we're currently standing in 3 different rooms simultaneously. The ship's internal geometry is non-Euclidean, Zektar confirmed. We have mapped approximately 12% of the interior. The rest seems to shift based on unknown criteria. Shift how? Corridors appear and disappear. Rooms change size. In one instance, a survey team opened a door and found themselves looking at the exterior of the station, despite being 50 meters from any external hull. Maya stopped walking. And you want me to poke around in the engine room of this thing? Sadar. Engine room, we believe, is the source of the psychoactive effects. If we can understand how it functions, we may be able to determine the ship's purpose and origin. They continued deeper into the vessel, following markers left by previous survey teams. The walls were covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly, as if Maya's brain couldn't quite process their shapes. Her cybernetic arm began to itch, the neural interface feeding her sensations that made no sense. "Zektar," she said, stopping at an intersection where 4 corridors met at impossible angles. "I need to know something. What aren't you telling me about this job?" The alien's scales shifted to a deep red color. "I am not certain what you mean. You're a certified ship inspector, but you're also something else. The way you move, the way you talk about this ship. You're not just here to evaluate salvage. You knew this ship existed before it was brought to the station." Zektar was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, more measured. "My people have stories, legends about ships like this one. We call them seeders, vessels left behind by an ancient civilization that traveled the galaxy long before any current species achieved sentience." "Stories about what?" "Tests, challenges. The seeders were said to seek out young species and evaluate them. Those who passed their trials were given gifts of knowledge and technology. Those who failed were destroyed, were ignored, left to develop naturally without interference." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "You think this is one of those ships?" "I believe it is possible. If I am correct, then this vessel represents an opportunity unlike any other in recorded history. Or it represents a test that my species isn't ready for." "That," Zektar said, his scales shifting back to gray, "is what we are here to determine." They reached what the survey teams had designated as the engine room. The door was a perfect circle cut into the ship's hull, with no visible mechanism for opening it. Maya approached carefully, her scanner beeping frantically as it tried to analyze the barrier. "How did the other teams get through?" "They did not. This door has remained sealed since the ship was discovered. We believe it will only open for the right person." "What makes you think I'm the right person?" "Because," Zektar said, "according to our legends, the seeders valued one trait above all others in the species they tested, which was the ability to solve problems that have no logical solution." Maya reached out with her cybernetic hand and touched the door. The moment her artificial fingers made contact with the surface, the circle began to iris open with a sound like singing crystal. Beyond the threshold lay a chamber filled with impossible geometries and lights that existed in colors she had no names for. "Well," Maya said, checking the charge on her plasma cutter and stepping through the doorway, "I always did like a challenge." As the door closed behind them, sealing them inside the heart of a 50,000-year-old mystery, Maya began to understand that she wasn't just here to examine an engine. She was here to prove that humanity was ready for whatever the seeders had left behind. The question was, what would happen if she was wrong? What humans do best, the engine room defied every law of physics Maya knew. Crystalline structures floated freely in midair, connected by streams of energy that bent and twisted through dimensions her eyes couldn't properly track. At the center of it all pulsed a sphere of pure light that seemed to contain an entire galaxy of swirling stars. "By the ancestors," Zektar whispered, his scales cycling rapidly through colors Maya hadn't seen before. "It is exactly as the legends described." Maya's scanner had given up trying to make sense of the readings and was simply displaying error messages in 17 different languages. Her cybernetic arm tingled with feedback from energy patterns it couldn't identify, and she could feel something at the edge of her consciousness, like a voice speaking just too quietly to understand. "The dreams are starting," she said, watching. Geometric patterns began to overlay her vision. "I know. I can sense it as well, despite my species' supposed resistance." Zektar moved closer to the central sphere, his amber eyes reflecting its impossible light. "The ship is scanning us, learning about us." "Learning what exactly?" "How we think, how we solve problems, how we respond to the unknown." As if summoned by his words, the chamber around them began to shift. The floating crystals rearranged themselves into new patterns, and Maya suddenly understood with absolute clarity that she was looking at a puzzle. Not a mechanical one, but something far more fundamental. A test of perception and understanding. It wants us to prove something, she said, the knowledge appearing in her mind fully formed. Yes. But what? Maya approached the nearest crystal formation. Up close, she could see that each crystal face was covered in symbols similar to those on the corridor walls. But these were different somehow. They seemed to respond to her presence, brightening when she looked directly at them. It's showing us how the universe works, she said, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. These aren't just pretty rocks. They're teaching aids. Each one contains information about fundamental forces, quantum mechanics, dimensional mathematics. Information that would advance any civilization by thousands of years, Zektar added, understanding dawning in his voice. But why leave it here? Why not just broadcast the knowledge or deliver it directly? Because knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. The Seeders needed to ensure that any species finding their gifts would be mature enough to use them responsibly. A new sound filled the chamber, a deep harmonic tone that seemed to resonate in Maya's bones. The sphere at the center began to pulse more rapidly, and she realized they were running out of time. The test isn't just intellectual, she said suddenly. It's moral. The ship is watching how we react to unlimited power. Before Zektar could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in harsh red, and Maya's communicator crackled to life. All personnel, this is station control. We have multiple hostile ships approaching. Unknown configuration, broadcasting no identification. All security teams to battle stations. Maya and Zektar exchanged glances. Corporate raiders? She asked. Worse. If word has leaked about this ship's existence, every government and megacorporation in the galaxy will want it. Zektar's scales had turned a deep, angry red. They will destroy this station to prevent their competitors from gaining access. Then we need to get this information secured before they arrive. Agreed, but how? The ship's systems are still largely incomprehensible. Maya looked around the chamber again, but this time she wasn't seeing it as an engineer trying to understand alien technology. She was seeing it as a human being faced with an impossible situation and limited time to act. We don't need to understand how it works, she said, pulling out her plasma cutter. We just need to understand what it wants. What are you doing? Instead of answering, Maya walked to the central sphere and placed both hands on its surface, biological and cybernetic. The moment she made contact, the universe exploded into her consciousness. She was flying through star systems, watching civilizations rise and fall across eons. She saw the Seeders in their prime, beings of pure energy who had transcended physical form but remembered what it was like to struggle and grow. They had planted these ships throughout the galaxy not as gifts, but as tests. The knowledge contained within could transform any species, but only if they approached it with the right mindset. Not as conquerors seeking power, but as students seeking understanding. Not as individuals seeking personal gain, but as representatives of their people willing to accept responsibility for the consequences. And in that moment of cosmic awareness, Maya understood what the test really was. Zektar, she said, her voice strangely calm despite the chaos erupting around them. I need you to record everything I'm about to tell you. Maya, your vital signs are spiking. The psychoactive effects are exactly what they're supposed to be. This isn't a malfunction. It's an interview. The chamber filled with a presence that was ancient beyond measure but infinitely patient. Maya felt herself being evaluated, not just as an individual but as a representative of humanity. Every choice she had ever made, every moment of courage or cowardice, every act of kindness or selfishness was laid bare before beings who had witnessed the birth and death of galaxies. They're asking if we're ready, she whispered. Not for the technology, but for the responsibility that comes with it. What do you tell them? Maya thought about her life, about the border wars and the friends she'd lost, about the prejudices she'd carried and the trust she'd been afraid to give. She thought about the station above them, with its mixture of species all trying to make a living at the edge of space. She thought about Zektar, an alien who had risked everything to bring her this opportunity. "I tell them we're not perfect," she said, feeling tears stream down her face. "We make mistakes. We fight each other. We're suspicious and greedy and scared most of the time, but we try to be better. We keep learning, keep growing, keep reaching for something higher." The presence in the chamber seemed to consider this. Around them, the ship's systems began to change, crystals rearranging themselves into new configurations. Maya felt knowledge flowing into her mind, but not the overwhelming flood she had expected. Instead, it was measured, careful, exactly as much as one person could safely contain. "The ship is downloading into your cybernetic implant," Zektar said, his scanner showing massive data transfers. "Terabytes of information, but encoded in a way that will only unlock gradually as humanity proves ready for each piece." A time release. "Gift," Maya said, understanding. "They're giving us the answers, but only as fast as we can handle them. And the test? The test is ongoing. Every choice we make, every way we use what they've given us, is part of the evaluation. They're not judging us once and walking away. They're partnering with us for the long haul." The chamber's light began to fade, and Maya felt the alien presence receding. But it wasn't gone, she realized. It was waiting, watching, ready to provide guidance when needed. "The attacking ships?" Zektar asked. Maya smiled, feeling the first pieces of cedar knowledge unlock in her mind. "Let me show you what humans do best when we're given the right tools." She walked to a control panel that hadn't been there moments before, her hands moving with certainty despite having never seen the interface. Under her guidance, the ship's systems came online fully for the first time in 50,000 years. The attackers approaching the station found themselves facing something they had never encountered: a human engineer with access to technology that could bend space itself. Their weapons passed harmlessly through shields that existed in folded dimensions. Their ships found themselves gently but irresistibly pushed away from the station by forces that violated everything they knew about physics. No one was killed. No ships were destroyed. They were simply, politely, but absolutely prevented from approaching. "Show of force without violence," Zektar observed. "Wisdom, rather than power." "The first lesson in the curriculum," Maya agreed. And apparently, we passed. Later, as they stood in the station's observation deck watching the would-be raiders retreat in confusion, Zektar asked the question that had been bothering him since they left the ship. "Why me? Why bring a human to evaluate a cedar vessel?" Maya looked at her unlikely partner. This alien who had trusted her with the find of the millennium despite having every reason to claim it for his own species. "Maybe because the test wasn't just for humanity," she said. "Maybe it was for all of us, to see if we could work together, trust each other, share the responsibility." Zektar's scales shifted to a warm gold color. "A test we both passed? The first of many, I think." Maya felt the cedar knowledge stirring in her mind, showing her glimpses of the challenges and opportunities ahead. "They've given us the tools, but we still have to do the work." "Together?" "Together. After all," Maya grinned, extending her hand to the alien who had become her partner. "That's what humans do best. We adapt, we learn, and we find ways to work with anyone who's willing to try." As their hands clasped, human and Vorthak, Maya felt the ship's presence one last time, not judging now but approving. They had proven that different species could overcome prejudice and fear to work toward common goals. They had shown wisdom in the face of ultimate power. They had passed the test not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through the most human trait of all: the willingness to trust in the potential for something better. The Cedars had planted their gifts well. Now it was up to the children of the galaxy to prove worthy of growing into something that would make their ancient benefactors proud. And in a small workshop on Frontier Station Alpha 7, Maya Chen began the work of preparing humanity for a future beyond their wildest dreams, one careful step at a time.